YouTube. Michael here. I wanted to continue a little bit from the meditation video that I posted about a week ago on some more specific ways to work with the elements and meditation, and then extending that into some sort of healing work and magical workings, specifically using the tarot deck that I designed, the Orbifold Tarot. So the Orbifold Tarot is based on the 4 elements and the numbers going in sequence from 1 to 10, and then of course there's the normal tarot structure of the court cards and the major arcana. But for this, I think for now let's focus mostly on just the minors, just the pips from 1 to 10 in all the 4 elements. And so we can work with those in meditation when we want to either raise the element within us or decrease the element within us, or balance it, right? Because that's why we would want to raise or decrease the elements, is basically to balance them. So for instance, let's say you're at a time when you're running fairly low on inspiration or juice, let's say, low on fire, not enough fire, and you'd like to raise that within you. So we could just go straight to, okay, well, not enough fire, let's pull out the 10 of fire and meditate on the 10 of fire because it's the fieriest card, or from the pips at least, it's the fieriest card. So let's work with that. That would be fine. There's no problem with that. But I might suggest, instead of working with where you want to be first, work with where you are. So assess your level of fire. Let's say, you're not completely devoid of creative oomph or energy. You've got a little bit of spark within you, a little bit of fire going, but it just doesn't seem quite enough. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, you're working with about a 3 of fire. And so then you might look for and pull out your 3 of fire. Oops, that's a bit close. Your 3 of fire. And meditate on the 3 of fire. Forget about, for the moment, forget about the symbolism of traditional 3 of fire, or the meaning of 3 of fire or 3 of wands, as you understand it, as you've learned it in the tarot. If you haven't learned tarot, perfect. That's not going to get in your way for this exercise. So meditate on the 3 of fire and align what you feel as your interior mojo as being at about, from a scale of 1 to 10, at about the level of 3, and align that with the image of 3 fire, 3 fire, and not only the image, but also that level of fire within you. And just become, it's going to sound cheesy, I know, I'm sorry, but it's true. Become one with the 3 of fire. Become one with that level of fire. So you accept that's where you are. It could be lower. You could have less inspiration. You could have less fire. You could have less mojo. But that's where you are. And do that. Meditate on that card and that level of interior fire, interior heat, interior inspiration, interior action, or drive for action, for a few days. And once you've kind of entered that level of fire for yourself, even just that, even just recognizing that level of fire may actually be enough spark that that's all you need. It may not be that you need more fire in you. It may not be that you need more inspiration or more drive for action. It may just be that you needed to tap into that level of fire that is already there. It's already inherent. It's already active within you. You just weren't able to quite access it. But let's say you've accessed it and it's like, well, yeah, no, not enough. I need more fire. So then pull out the next one up, which would be, of course, your 4. I'm looking for my 4. There's my 4. And meditate on the 4 for a few days. And feel within your body not only the drive for action, inspiration, that feeling of inspiration and creativity, doership, or drive for action, but also let it rise up from the 3 to the 4, and feel what that's like in your body. Feel the heat that creates in your body, and it may not be strong heat. It may just be a gentle rise in heat, and that's actually what we're looking for in a way. It's just that gentle rise in heat, rise in inspiration, rise in desire for action, drive. And you would continue on in that way every day until you reach the level of fire, of heat, that you feel is balancing you to the degree that you need for that time. The opposite is also true. So right now we're in the middle of July. Where I am anyway, it's hot. It's hot and humid and sticky, so there's a fairly severe combination of both heat and water actually in the air. So fire, air, and water. It's not, the air isn't really the problem. The air is sufficient. If anything, the degree of heat and water in the air makes the air feel deficient. But it's really the heat that's the issue. That's where, for me at least, I go a little bit nuts, and the heat actually drains me. It makes me feel tired. So too much heat is actually often taking away my inspiration. It's burning me out. And so I might think of the extreme heat and humidity. Today it's not too bad, right now it's not too bad, but in a month it's going to be. So I might consider this meditation in a month, or in a couple of weeks, of working with my 10 of fire, and really entering that heat and imagining, okay, not only is it the heat that it is, but actually imagining it's greater, and really entering that and letting the heat develop within me so that it actually peaks over what is actually going on, so that I know that I can sustain actually a little bit more heat. That's part of it. And so I would meditate on that for a couple of days, or I might meditate on it for a little while, a week or two, before I know that a strong heat wave is coming. And then as I'm entering that degree of heat and really understanding it and letting it be part of my physical experience, then I might ramp that down a little bit and take it to the 9. And so on, each day or each couple of days, taking the heat down by meditating on the card that is lower on that numerical scale of 1 to 10. And so in that way I can actually manage my degree of interior heat. And let's say that decreasing the heat isn't quite enough, I'd like to increase the coolness within me, the element of water, not so much the element of water in the sense of humidity, because that's already quite high, but the sense of the element of water in terms of coolness. So even though it might be very refreshing to jump into a cold pool of water, a 10 of water, you could think, instead maybe meditate for a little while on the ace of water. So you've got your heat, you've meditated on your heat, and then the same day, in the same meditation practice, switch from that 10 or 9 of fire that you've been working with and add this ace of water. And then you could even stay at the 9 and add your 2 of water the next day or the next few days, so that you're letting the coolness rise up as the heat actually descends down, comes down a little bit. And you continue working in that way with your heat and your water, and moving in that way until they reach maybe around a 5 or a 6 and a 4 or something like that. But really interiorize the aspects of the element. See if you can interiorly create for yourself the feeling of coolness. What's the feeling of the minimal coolness of the ace of water? And how does that slight coolness affect the overwhelming sense of the 9 of fire, that excessive heat? So that's from a weather perspective, it's interesting, but there are other applications too. So staying with the idea of heat, just because it's convenient, we're already there, you can work with similar emotions that create heat. So let's say things like anger or frustration, emotions that tend to come up not so coincidentally during hotter periods of time, or hotter seasons. So we can return to this 10 of fire, that explosion that you may not have exploded around people in your life, but you feel like that. There's a frustration, anger that's just ready to boil over. It's at the 10, it's at the limit. One more straw and I'm going to blow. And so meditate on that, and instead of trying to suppress the anger and trying to rise above the anger and trying to not feel the anger, in your meditation, concentrate on the 10 of fire, and let that really enter you as that extreme of anger that is just ready to blow, and feel what that emotion is within you. What are the sensations of the emotion in your body? Where is the heat? Where is the fire? Is the fire in your feet? Is it in your feet? Is it in your pelvis? Is it in your abdomen? Is it stuck in your throat? Is it in the chest? What is the direction of that heat, that anger? Does that heat move downward? Is it diffused downward through your body? Or is it rising upward in your body and radiating outward? Or is it behind a wall? Is it contained in a wall where the heat is very intense behind the wall, but in front of the wall there's no heat? And all of those different things. It's a little bit different for everyone, of course, but with anger the tendency is for heat to be rising up and wanting to move outward. Maybe you have built a wall that prevents that anger from coming forward. And so even though, again, you might want to go straight from the 10 to the ace, that may not be the healthiest way to deal with that anger and with that heat. Instead, feel it. After you've felt it and you've gone deeply into that heat, again, same thing, start working with the 9. And just feel that heat starting to dissipate a little bit. If you do feel that you have a wall that's containing the heat, containing the anger, containing that emotion, and preventing you from expressing it, then you may actually also want to work with the earth element. The same idea, very same thing, and maybe that wall may not be a 10. It may not be so strong that it's a 10. Maybe the wall of earth that is containing your anger is around a 7. And so you can actually meditate on the 2 cards and visualize the 7 kind of in front of the 10 of fire. So your exterior, what you present to the world, is that 7 of earth, that wall of stability. But really inside you're bubbling like this. But it's like volcano. Volcano is going to be kind of like that 7 or 8, maybe 9 even of earth. But as soon as that 10 bubbles over, it's going to be earth and fire, everywhere. So you would start working with the 2 cards, the 7 and the 10, until you descend the heat, the anger, enough that it matches that 7. And then you might want to start working, because you don't want to make the wall come down too early, otherwise, yes, it will explode and it may be harmful to people, or it maybe not harmful but hurtful to people, and that would usually also come back. And so you would work with both until it comes to the level where they're both at about a 7, and then you can start working down from the 7 to the 6. And again, anger is actually a really useful emotion. It's not a bad emotion. None of the emotions are bad. Anger is really useful in showing you, well, what's not working for me? What do I don't like about my current situation, and what can I change? Remember too that fire is the element of change, of transformation, and anger as a fire emotion is showing you actually some doors into change. And so in that process of feeling your anger, feeling the physical sensations, and gradually decreasing from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7, diffuses the anger, diffuses the heat enough that you can maybe gain some insight, open up to how can I transform this intensity of anger and make that shift in myself or in my life that the anger is a reaction to. Whereas if you just go from 10 to ace and build that wall from 7 to 10 of earth, so that the 10 of earth is completely enclosing the ace of fire, similar to how our knight of earth might be, right? Forget about the associations that we normally have with Knight of Earth, at least for the moment, for this exercise, and just go, okay, well, there's that little seed of heat hidden within the earth, possibly behind the earth. This would be, if I'm looking at it, I know you can't see, but I'm looking at that seed, and it's behind a wall of earth. And that's maybe not going to help so much to suppress it to that degree. So lower the heat until it becomes useful to you. So that's starting to get into combinations of elements and how to work the balance of the elements. And of course, first the card that comes to mind about balance of elements is always this lovely temperance, right? Where water and fire, heat and coolness are being tempered. That's the meaning of the word temperance. Heat and fire, or opposites, are being tempered through a medium. And in this case, that medium is the medium of air. So that could be another way to work with my previous example of the weather, of that heat and humidity. And so we've got the air element, the fire element, and the water element. So we might meditate on this, but then also pull out, say, our 10 of fire, 8 of water with the humidity high, and ace of air, because the air feels minor, it feels condensed and compacted amongst that heat and humidity. And then you might, with the temperance card, start visualizing and feeling within yourself a rise over a few days from the ace of air to the 2 of air to the 3 of air, and then maybe a decrease of the heat and a rise in the water. And so keeping that concept, then you can actually incorporate that not only in your meditation, in your interior workings, with practical, physical aspects, but also with your emotions, as discussed. And then extend that further for those of you who practice magic and ritual and spell work. Incorporate that into your spells. So we use various herbs and ingredients in spells. We use fire, we use water, in elemental magic for all of their various properties. So keeping with the fire theme, we might use candle magic, both as transformation and in a way to create action toward whatever that is that we want to create with our spell. Fire is also a relatively fast element. We could argue about whether fire is faster or air is faster. It doesn't matter to me what I think it is. What matters is if you view air as very fast, as the fastest element, then if you want something to happen quickly, then you would use the air element for that to happen. If, on the other hand, you see fire as being the quickest element, then you would use fire. What matters more about that stuff is really what's going on in here than how does it work outwardly. They interact with each other, of course, but it's first what happens inside. So let's say that you need a spell to awaken more intuition in yourself, more of the water element, intuition or compassion, caring. And you want to awaken that, then again you would work with water. Let's say that you want a very slow working spell that would incorporate the earth element. You want it to be slow working, you want it to last, you want it to linger and stay for a long time. Then you would work with the earth element. And you can use the cards as actually magical substitutions for the various things that you need. So salt, for instance, it's readily available. It's hard to not have enough salt on hand. But let's say you're somewhere that you need to do a quick spell and you're thinking, I need salt. You can work with a card. You happen to have your tarot deck. You can work with a card that is both earth and fire. I think of salt as earth and fire. And salt too is a cubic structure. So it has the 4, the 6, and the 8 inherent in it, and the 12 to some degree, the 12 edges of the cube. But if we reduce the cube down to its basics, it's a square. And so we have earth and fire as a square, and it just so happens that we have a card in the Orbifold that is a combination of earth and fire, and that's the Emperor. So you can, again, kind of forget about the traditional, your regular associations with the Emperor. You can use those associations again later, it's no problem. They're in you, you can regain them. But for a moment, forget about the associations with the Emperor, forget that this is the Emperor card, and just see it as a 4. A 4 that combines earth and fire, and if salt for you is earth and fire together, then that can be your magical substitution for salt. I won't go through all of them like that, but you can see how they interchange and they intermingle. And so you can use a combination of consciously chosen cards as aspects of your spell. Let's say you want to mix some dirt. Let's say, some fun stuff like these really witchy things that we do, but are also kind of typical. So let's say you want to mix some graveyard dirt with water, and you want to do that spell to awaken not just intuition, but intuition and wisdom of ancestors or of people who have lived before, whether they're related to you or not. But you want to access kind of ancient wisdom. So you might take then your death card, meditating on the death card and visualizing the aspect of ancient knowledge that you want to access, and then combine that, instead of mixing your graveyard dirt, this is your graveyard dirt, or you could also take one of your earth cards. 10 is maybe a bit too much, that would make mud in your water, but maybe an ace or 2 of earth, and combine that then with your moon card. Moon is, in the Orbifold Tarot, the moon is pure water, and that pure water is also talking about associating with the unconscious and intuition, to some degree psychic abilities. And so this combination, when you're meditating on them, when you're entering them as principles, not even as cards or as scenes, but as principles, inherent principles, that could act in lieu of your actual spell. So I'll leave it there. That gives a little bit idea. Same thing also with the court cards. So Knight of Fire, Seed of Fire, in Fire, and you can kind of forget about what does the Knight of Fire mean. Forget about that for a little while, and just go, okay, well, what's it like when that fire builds so deeply that it contains fire? It's fire within fire, and it's like just self generating fire. And then what's the difference then when we take a seed of water within fire? Or the opposite, what's it like when we reduce that fire to a seed and place it within water? So you can use the court cards as 2-element combinations. Most of them are 2-element combinations. And you can work your recipe, your spell recipe. Going, okay, well, this spell is about 2 parts air and 7 parts earth and 3 parts fire and 5 parts water. And so you would take 2 of air, 7 of earth, I think is what I said, 3 of fire and 5 of water, and just lay those cards out and meditate on all of them, and associate, well, what air elements of that spell, what other ingredients of air would you be using? Let's say it's incense. Incense, and it's not necessarily 2, but it's incense that is a mild incense that is about the level of a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. And so visualize that incense as your 2, and even if you can, smell the incense, make it real in your scene, and perform the ritual, perform the spell interiorly using the actual ingredients in your visualization, but use the cards exteriorly to access not only the ingredient, but the element that the ingredient represents, and let that combination of 3 or 4 or 20 cards, whatever it is, whatever your recipe requires, and let that combination enter you, that merging of those proportions, those differing proportions of the 4 elements, or only 3 elements, or however many you use, and let them really enter you as the completion of that ritual, or that spell, or that meditation. They're all in some ways the same thing, just different ways of exploring them. So I hope that gives you a different idea, a different perspective on how to use tarot in general, but more specifically how to use the Orbifold Tarot in a way that steps out of some of the traditional ways that we use tarot. You can use it like a recipe. I'll be back with a few more videos on how to use the Orbifold soon. Take care.